Good day, brothers. I've got 4 emails sitting in my inbox, and these stories, they're rough, they're real, and they're unfiltered. I'm going to read them out exactly as they were sent to me. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you've got a story of your own, check the pinned comment, the email's there. This first one comes from a guy who goes by the name Rusted Gears 88. I did everything they told me to do. Work hard, provide, be a good man, take care of your responsibilities. I believed it. I believed that if I stayed on the right path, life would reward me. Instead, life handed me a set of chains, and the woman who swore she loved me became the one tightening them around my neck. I met her in my late 20s. Beautiful, charming, the type who made you feel like the sun rose just to shine on her. I was working a decent job at the time, not rich but steady. I thought settling down would bring stability. Everyone around me was getting married, starting families, so I figured it was the right time. We got married fast, and before long, we had a child together. For a while it felt real. I worked long hours, put food on the table, made sure bills were paid. She stayed home, took care of the baby, or at least that's what she said she was doing. But cracks started to show. She went out more, complained about money constantly, and picked fights over nothing. I brushed it off. I told myself stress does that to people. I didn't realize she was already looking for her exit. The day she filed for divorce, I felt the floor drop out from under me. She said she wasn't happy, that she needed space, that she deserved better. I begged her to reconsider, but it didn't matter. The papers were signed before I had time to breathe. That's when the nightmare began. The court summoned me, laid out my so-called obligations, and handed her everything she wanted. She got custody. I got visitation every other weekend. She got the house. I got an apartment with peeling paint and paper-thin walls. Then came the child support order. They calculated it based on my income without caring about my expenses. They didn't care about rent, food, transportation, or the fact that I was starting over from nothing. All they cared about was making sure she got her cut. At first, I paid without fail. I told myself it was for my kid. I wanted my child to have stability even if I didn't. But it didn't take long to see where the money was going. The kid showed up in worn-out clothes, shoes falling apart, hair unkempt. When I asked about it, she brushed me off. Meanwhile, I saw her posting pictures online with new handbags, dinners at expensive restaurants, nights out with her friends. The child support wasn't supporting the child. It was supporting her lifestyle. Still, I paid. Month after month, money bled from my account into hers. Every paycheck was cut down before it even hit my hands. I worked overtime, side gigs, anything to keep afloat. I lived like a ghost in my own life, just trying to survive the financial drain. Then came the day I fell behind. Not because I didn't care, not because I was lazy, but because I lost my job. The company downsized, and I was let go. I filed for unemployment, scrambled for new work, anything to keep the money flowing. The payments stopped for a single month, and suddenly I was treated like a criminal. Letters in the mail, threats of license suspension, court dates. They made me feel like I abandoned my kid, even though the truth was I was drowning and trying to stay alive. When I finally found another job, the court didn't care about my transition period. They didn't care that I was digging out of debt. They slapped on interest and back pay, treating me like I was delinquent instead of desperate. I was ordered to pay extra every month to catch up. What little breathing room I had disappeared. Then came the real hammer. I missed one court-ordered makeup payment by a week, and they sent a notice. If I didn't come up with the money immediately, they would issue a warrant. Jail. They were threatening to lock me up for falling behind on payments for my own child. Let that sink in. A man trying to survive, trying to support his kid, being threatened with prison for not handing over cash fast enough. I scraped it together, sold personal items, drained what little savings I had left, borrowed money from relatives I didn't want to bother. I did everything I could to keep myself out of a cell, but the message was clear. I wasn't a father in their eyes. I wasn't a man. I was a wallet, a number on a piece of paper. If that number didn't match what they demanded, I was disposable. The worst part? The little time I had with my kid felt poisoned. My child was young but not stupid. Kids notice things. They hear the bitterness in their mother's voice when she talks about me. They feel the tension. I could see confusion in their eyes. Why did Daddy live in a small apartment while Mommy had everything? Why did Daddy have to work so much? Why did Daddy seem so tired? The system doesn't care about the father-child bond. It doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't even care about the child. It cares about money. It rewards the parent who plays victim, who positions themselves as the primary caregiver, while punishing the one who actually funds the entire arrangement. I used to believe in justice. I used to believe in family. Now I believe in survival. Every paycheck feels like a countdown to the next crisis. Every interaction with her feels like a setup, another chance for her to drag me back into court, demanding more, claiming the child needs additional support while she lives like royalty. There is no winning. If I pay, I suffer. If I miss a payment, I suffer worse. If I try to fight for custody, I lose because the system is stacked against me. They say a child needs both parents, but in practice, they treat fathers as cash machines and mothers as saints. The years keep passing, and I'm still chained. Chained to a woman who left me. Chained to a system that sees me as expendable. Chained to the idea that if I stop, even for a second, they will destroy me completely. And the irony is, I love my kid. That's the cruelest part of all. I want to be there. I want to provide, not just with money, but with guidance, love, and presence. But the system doesn't allow that. It reduces everything to dollars and cents. It makes me a visitor in my own child's life while forcing me to bankroll hers. They call it support. I call it extortion. If you want to know what it feels like, imagine carrying a boulder on your back every day. You walk, you stumble, you sweat, but you keep moving. Then someone comes along, demands you carry an even bigger boulder, and if you collapse, they threaten to lock you in a cage. That is child support prison. That is the reality men live under. The truth is ugly. Men are disposable in this system. Fathers are treated as paychecks, not parents. And when the money runs dry, the punishment comes fast and merciless. I am not alone. There are thousands, maybe millions of men like me, silenced, vilified, drained of everything. We keep working, we keep paying, and we keep suffering because the alternative is prison. That is not fatherhood. That is slavery. The next email is from Shadow Ledger. I did not get destroyed in court. I did not get destroyed by alimony or child support. I did not even get destroyed by a divorce settlement. I got destroyed by something much worse, something far more efficient and merciless. My own reputation was ripped out of me in front of an audience I never asked for, never agreed to, and never had a chance to defend myself against. It began the way so many disasters begin. A relationship. A woman who was never worth the time I gave her. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs clearly. She was addicted to her phone. Every spare moment, her face lit up in that blue glow, scrolling, posting, curating her fake little world for strangers. Instagram was her lifeline. TikTok was her stage. Her reality was likes, shares, comments, and validation from faceless people online. I should have walked away the moment I saw it. I should have realized that anyone who builds their self-worth from screens has no real soul to give in a relationship, but I stayed. At the time, I told myself she would grow out of it. I told myself she would eventually set her phone down, look me in the eye, and exist in the real world. I told myself that her obsession was a phase, just like every other bad habit, but it was not. It was her identity. Her personality was not her own. It was borrowed from whatever trends were floating around that week. So the breakup was inevitable. She was not built for commitment. She was built for attention. I expected it to be the usual kind of split, awkward silence, maybe some bitterness, maybe some fake tears, and eventually distance. I figured we would both move on, and that would be the end. I was wrong. When she walked away, she decided silence was not enough. Distance was not enough. She wanted blood, and in this era, blood is not spilled in private. It is spilled in front of an audience. Her weapon was not a lawyer or a court. It was her phone. She started with Instagram, a long post full of vague but poisonous language. She never mentioned details, never mentioned facts, never mentioned anything specific. That is the trick. She did not accuse me of a single crime because that would have been too easy to disprove. Instead, she painted a picture, a story where she was the victim and I was the villain. I was controlling, I was manipulative, I was toxic. Her favorite word, that word women throw around when they want to destroy a man but cannot point to anything real. She tagged me, tagged my friends, tagged mutual acquaintances. She put it out there for everyone to see. Then she moved on to Twitter, where the mob eats these stories up like candy. Then TikTok, where she cried into the camera with a shaky voice, telling everyone how she survived me. It spread faster than I could comprehend. Screenshots bouncing through group chats, strangers commenting on my character, strangers telling me what kind of man I was when they had never even looked me in the eye. Within a week, I had lost half my friends. People who once called me brother, who shared drinks with me, who sat at my table, suddenly stopped answering texts. Some even unfollowed me publicly to prove they stood with her. Nobody wanted to be caught defending the accused. In 2 weeks, my professional life was in flames. Clients pulled out of contracts with flimsy excuses. Networking connections went cold. Invitations dried up. When I walked into a room, I felt the silence. People stared, but nobody spoke. My name was not just whispered, it was poisoned. In a month, I was finished. My boss did not call me into the office to hear my side. He called me in to give me a lecture about how this company takes accusations seriously. That was it. No questions, no chance to explain, no opportunity to clear myself. I was not fired immediately. That would have made it too obvious. Instead, they slowly suffocated me. Projects were taken off my desk. Emails went unanswered. Meetings carried on without me. I was still showing up, but I was a ghost. Eventually, they told me it would be best for all parties if I moved on. That is how reputations are destroyed today. Not with evidence, not with court documents, not with a jury, with a fucking post. One post. That is all it takes. I tried to fight back. I tried to explain to mutual friends. I tried to send long messages breaking down the truth, laying out how nothing she said was real. But no one wanted to hear it. No one wanted to be the one defending me, because defending me meant going against the tide. And the tide is always stronger. Nobody wants to drown for someone else. The more I tried to explain, the guiltier I looked. That is another trick of the modern world. If you stay silent, they say silence is proof. If you defend yourself, they say you are deflecting or gaslighting. No matter what you do, you lose. Meanwhile, she thrived. She gained followers. She got sympathy. She was showered in comments, calling her brave, strong, a survivor. Other women flocked to her, praising her for speaking out. Every like, every men are trash comment, every heart emoji fed her. She built a platform off my ashes. She reinvented herself as a victim advocate. She turned my destruction into her career. I lost everything. She gained everything. There were no charges, no police reports, no legal battles, just her words against my silence. That is all it takes now. Guilt is assumed. Innocence is irrelevant. The internet is judge, jury, and executioner. And once your name is poisoned online, it never washes clean. You can move cities, change jobs, grow a beard, dye your hair, but the internet never forgets. Your name will always be linked to that story. Strangers who were not even alive when it happened will be able to search your name and see her version of events. That scar is permanent. What destroyed me was not the breakup. What destroyed me was the performance. She staged her tragedy for an audience and made me the villain. And people believed it. They always believe it, because it is easier to join the mob than to stand alone against it. My father once told me that a man's name is the only thing he truly owns. Money can be stolen, homes can burn, bodies can break, but your name is who you are. I used to believe him. Now I know better. Your name is not yours anymore. It belongs to the mob. It belongs to anyone with a phone and a story to tell. That is how my life ended. Not with a judge's gavel, not with a prison sentence, not even with a betrayal in court. It ended with a post, a single post, a performance for an audience that was hungry for another monster to tear apart. And the worst part is, I never got to stand in front of that audience. I never got to speak to them. I never got to prove myself. My trial was held without me, and my sentence was carried out in silence. I was not destroyed by truth. I was destroyed by narrative. That is the world men live in now. Here's a story sent in by Iron Hollow. Divorce court is not a room. It is a slaughterhouse. The man walks in whole, and the man walks out carved into pieces. I learned this the day I stood there in my best suit, sweating under the fluorescent lights, believing that justice meant balance. What I received was not balance. It was mutilation. 3 years of marriage. That was it. Not decades. Not a lifetime. 3 short years. I thought that meant something. I thought it meant they could not take much. I thought it meant the blade would barely scratch me. But 3 years was long enough. Long enough for her to sink her claws in. Long enough for the court to decide that she was entitled to live the rest of her life sucking the marrow out of my bones. She never worked, not once. She woke up at noon, she scrolled her phone, she drank her lattes and planned her next vacation. She consumed, she lounged, she demanded, and I paid. She never built anything, never created anything, never lifted a single burden. I should have known the moment she insisted on her lifestyle. That word should have been my warning. But I was blind. The judge did not see her as a woman who had wasted 3 years leeching off me. He saw her as someone whose standard of living had to be preserved. That was the word that gutted me, preserved, as if she were a rare species in need of protection, as if I were not the one bleeding out from the wreckage. The gavel hit like a butcher's cleaver. Alimony, indefinite. I was sentenced to keep her alive. I was ordered to keep feeding her even as she laughed her way out of the courtroom. The chains clicked shut. I was no longer a husband, but I was still her servant. It began small. A percentage pulled from each paycheck. I thought I could live with it. Tighten my belt, cut some corners, grind harder. But it grew. Month by month, year by year, it bled more out of me. My bank account shrank. My savings vanished. My rent crept higher. My meals became cheaper, smaller, emptier. I felt my world narrowing while hers expanded. I would scroll through social media and see her smiling in other countries, wearing clothes I could not afford, holding cocktails I could not buy. She showed off jewelry, handbags, shoes, all funded by the wound in my chest that refused to close. She was thriving on my decay. I was eating ramen while she was eating steak. The system called it fairness. Her lawyer called it justice. But it was not justice. It was vivisection. They tied me down, cut me open, and ordered me to keep producing blood for her feast. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling her presence like a parasite crawling under my skin. Every time I went to work, she was there. Every overtime shift, every drop of sweat on my forehead, I knew she was waiting at the other end to lap it up. It was like living with a vampire. I was the source. She was the hunger. I tried to fight. I filed motions. I argued that she could work, that she was young, healthy, and capable of supporting herself. I showed the bills piling up on my side, the hours I was working, the exhaustion tearing me apart. The judge stared at me like I was pathetic, like I was a man whining about responsibility. He did not change a thing. The blade stayed in, the bleeding continued. Over time, I began to rot, not just financially, spiritually, mentally. I stopped caring about myself. I stopped buying clothes. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped dating. I could not afford any of it. And even if I could, what woman would want a man whose spine was chained to another woman's purse? I became hollow, a man-shaped husk stumbling from paycheck to paycheck, carrying another's weight. She, on the other hand, flourished. She did not just survive. She celebrated. She flaunted her life. She smiled for cameras. She paraded boyfriends who drank champagne in clubs funded by my exhaustion. I was not only feeding her, I was feeding them. My labor kept her lovers comfortable. They drank my blood too. That is when hate settled in. Pure, undiluted hate. At first I hated myself. I hated my stupidity. I hated the way I had ignored the red flags, the way I had believed the lies about love and partnership. But the hate shifted. It sharpened. It grew teeth. I began to hate her with a ferocity that burned. Every photo of her smiling felt like a knife in my throat. Every time I saw her flaunt what was mine, I wanted to tear the world apart. Alimony is not a legal arrangement. It is slow murder. It kills you by installment. Each month is another incision, another pint drained. You walk, you breathe, you work, but you are dying piece by piece. She was not my ex-wife. She was my executioner. The court just handed her the blade. People told me to move on. They told me to let go, to rebuild, to focus on myself. But how do you rebuild when half of every brick you lay is stolen before you can set it down? How do you breathe when your lungs belong to someone else? Moving on is impossible when your past drags itself into every paycheck, every grocery bill, every rent payment. She was gone from my life, but present in every dollar I earned. She was the ghost that never left. Years passed. The numbers added up. Tens of thousands drained. Vacations I could have taken, homes I could have bought, investments I could have made, all gone. My body aged faster under the weight. My back ached from the hours. My face grew hollow from stress. I looked older than my years, worn down from carrying her forever. She remained untouched. She looked younger in every picture, rejuvenated by my ruin. That is the cruelty of it. Men are destroyed, and women are rewarded. She was rewarded for failing, rewarded for quitting, rewarded for abandoning me. The system handed her my veins as a prize and told her to drink. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had never married. I would still have my savings. I would still have my strength. I would still have my dignity. Marriage did not give me partnership. Marriage gave me a parasite that drained me even after I cut it off. Alimony is dressed up in legal language. Judges use words like fairness, equity, balance. But the reality is blood. The reality is mutilation. The reality is standing in front of a man and ordering him to carry a woman who is perfectly capable of walking on her own. The reality is slavery. I was not divorced. I was butchered, and I was ordered to keep bleeding until she was satisfied. That is the truth men need to know. And finally, we've got one from Ashan Wire. It started with a whisper. That's how destruction comes these days. Not with a bullet, not with a blade, with a whisper from one mouth into a system that feeds on it, grows it, makes it law. I didn't hear it myself. Someone else told me. A coworker came by my desk, face pale, eyes darting. He leaned in and said, "She's saying things about you." My stomach sank. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes. Just dropped the grenade and walked off like he didn't want the shrapnel to hit him too. She was young, fresh out of college, pretty, the type everyone tries to impress in the office. She knew her power, she wore it like perfume. She smiled at people and they bent over backwards to stay in her orbit. I never tried. I had a job to do. I kept my head down. I kept things professional. But that's not how the world works anymore. Ignoring someone is worse than insulting them. By lunch, the whisper had grown. I could feel it. Conversation stopped when I walked by. Eyes flicked in my direction and then away, like I was radioactive. No one asked me anything. No one said a word. Just the weight of suspicion filling every corner of the office like smoke. 2 hours later, HR called. My heart pounded so loud I thought they could hear it through the phone. "Can you step into the conference room?" Neutral voice. Polite, but I knew. That's where the gallows were waiting. The room was cold. 2 women from HR sat across from me, hands folded like nuns ready to deliver a sermon. They didn't even warm me up with small talk. "We received a report." That's all it took. My chest tightened. I asked what it was about. They told me she felt unsafe around me. Unsafe, that word again. The blade that cuts without leaving fingerprints. I asked what exactly I had done. They said she felt I was hovering, that I stood too close, that I made comments. Vague, hollow, empty. Nothing I could defend against because there was nothing there. I asked when this supposedly happened. They said she didn't feel comfortable giving details. And that was it. My reputation was bleeding out on the floor, and no one cared about evidence. They took my badge. They told me to work from home until further notice. Work from home meant exile. Work from home meant the noose was already tightening. By the next day, my email access was cut. By the end of the week, my name was gone from the internal directory. People I had worked with for years didn't reply to my messages. It was like I had been erased, like I had never existed. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, smiling while she destroyed me, laughing behind closed doors while she played victim. I paced my apartment like a caged animal, replaying every interaction with her in my head. Had I said something wrong? Had I stood too close? Had I looked too long? Number. I knew I hadn't. But that didn't matter. Truth was dead. Perception was everything. The official letter came 2 weeks later. Due to violations of our code of conduct, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Violations. Plural. Like I was some serial predator. No specifics. No explanation. Just a sealed coffin with my name on it. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. All those years, all the late nights, all the weekends sacrificed, gone, burned to ash by one accusation. Not even an accusation. A feeling. She said she felt unsafe. That was all it took. The silence was worse than the firing. Friends I thought I had at work never reached out. People I grabbed drinks with every Friday vanished. My phone stopped buzzing. No texts, no calls, nothing. Like I had leprosy, like defending me would infect them too. My family tried at first. They asked what happened. I tried to explain, tried to tell them it was lies, but I could see it in their eyes. Doubt, suspicion, that little flicker of what if? That's the poison. It doesn't matter how innocent you are. Once the lie is spoken, it sticks. It spreads. You can't scrub it off. I looked her up online one night, my hands shaking with rage. There she was, posting selfies, drinks with friends, smiling at parties, not a scratch on her. Living her life while mine burned. She wasn't hiding. Why would she? She had nothing to lose. I had everything to lose, and I lost it. I stopped going outside, couldn't handle the looks, the imagined whispers. I felt like every pair of eyes in the grocery store was dissecting me, judging me, believing the story they never even heard in detail. Just the label. The label was enough. Predator, harasser, unsafe. Unemployment checks kept me alive, but barely. I burned through savings. Rent loomed like a guillotine. Job applications went nowhere. Every interview dried up after the background checks. I knew why. Somewhere in some file, the accusation sat like a curse. Not guilty, not proven, just enough stink to poison me forever. Nights stretched into mornings with no sleep. I drank too much. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes hurt. My mind replayed the collapse over and over. The whisper, the meeting, the badge slipping out of my hand, the look on HR's faces, cold, clinical, like I was already dead. Anger festered. It grew claws. I wanted to scream at the world. I wanted to burn that office down. I wanted her to feel the same suffocation she handed me. But none of that would change the fact that my name was blackened. My career was rotting. My life had been gutted with one word: unsafe. That word will outlive me. That word will shadow every step I take. Employers will see it in the subtext. Friends will feel it in the silence. Family will taste it in every awkward pause. Unsafe. You think false accusations just end with a job loss. They don't. They spread. They infect. They crawl into every corner of your life until you can't breathe without choking on them. I didn't lose my career. I didn't just lose my friends. I lost myself. Every mirror I look into shows me a man branded by a lie. And the woman who lit the fire, she keeps smiling. She keeps living. She keeps winning. Because the world doesn't punish liars. It rewards them. That is the truth no one wants to hear. That's all for today. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Also, click on the notification bell to know when I drop a new video. Bye.